open work session of the Wycomico County Council. First item on the agenda is the poultry houses. Good evening, gentlemen. How are you?
Good evening.
Good. I think the last time we left off, Mr. Lennox, we were looking at trying to get some facsimile of a bill presented with an addendum that would have more specific requirements.
Following the last discussion, Mr. Cannon, we provided that outline that you had agreed on preliminarily in a very draft form to your attorney. That has been prepared and circulated for your review. That was our only role at this point. The additional details about the buffers, frankly, have been a little bit of a struggle. Not being a horticulturist, I think I'm going to be looking, as this progresses, to a little bit more detail or direction from the elected officials as far as how much detail we want to get into regarding plant size, spacing, those sorts of issues. We can prepare that. From my standpoint right now internally, it's not a draft that I feel comfortable circulating publicly, but we can get to that as a matter of detail coming from your discussions. But the larger issues, we have been addressed as I've read your attorney's draft legislation as you left it at the last work session.
Can we, when we start this, can we start like on the first page and go down?
This is certainly, Mr. Holloway, I'll do anything you like. This is not my document.
Yeah, I agree. That would be fine.
Sure,
if you don't,
sure,
if you don't
that's
mind.
fine.
Does everybody have a copy of it?
No, sir.
I'm getting it. Give us a second.
Uh-oh, I found one. Tied. I didn't see mine.
I've got a lot of, pardon the pun, a lot of chicken scratch on mine here.
Everybody good? Okay. Jack, if you could, then. If you want to start at the beginning, we'll just go through it.
Mr. Cannon, can I defer to Ms. Harris?
Yes. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
I'm still attempting to pull mine up. Do you want me to just come, do you have a copy of it?
Yeah.
I think if I do. Okay, can you catch me up? Sorry, I was trying to pull up.
We're just
my
reviewing, we're just going through the bill as is, item by item, I guess, article by article.
Okay, so do you want me to walk you through it? Read
If
it
you
out?
could, starting with, I guess, section 225 definitions.
Okay.
Yes.
Can we go further back, or
All right.
can we go to the
Go ahead,
first?
Joe.
Yeah, I've
Tell
got
us what you
a couple things here. In the first, where it says an act to amend chapter 225, the second paragraph, where it says a sudden increase in the number of poultry houses, can we change that to an increase?
An increase, sure.
I don't think there's been a sudden increase. The third paragraph, whereas new poultry house developments are of a significantly larger size and concentration, can we, instead of developments, which that's not really a development, new poultry houses and farms are significantly larger? Could we?
We can, developments was the way, there, Mr. Lennox and I were discussing an issue with how to appropriately convey, like when we set the buffer requirements and stuff like that, that the vegetative buffer doesn't need to be around each individual house, but around the perimeter of, you know, if there's a group of 3 or 4 houses, you don't want to have to make the buffer around each individual house.
Right.
So the way that we had done that was to call it a poultry house development. We can change that wording if you're not happy with it. It was just an idea. So, so in short, we can change it, but we should make sure that it's consistent with where it's used throughout the legislation.
So complex?
That would be.
You want
okay.
complex?
Yeah.
I don't.
I think that's what, isn't that a term that's used? Yeah. Fine.
Google it.
Okay. That's all in that section. I got some other things.
Go ahead, Joe. You have the floor.
Pardon?
You have the floor.
Do it again? Okay,
Yes, sir.
225-25. There was a mistake here. Poultry house, any structure including all relating buildings and, I can't even pronounce that word.
Appurtenances.
Yeah. Design, sorry about that. Designed for use for the breeding of poultry. We don't do that
Yeah,
here
it's
on the
not for
shore
the
much.
breeding.
It's a growing of,
For the growing.
yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Is anybody else? Let me go on.
You're on a roll. You have the
Okay.
floor.
In Section A of that article, following standards apply to all new poultry houses instead of all poultry houses.
Wait. Where are you?
Top
Okay.
page, top of
Oh,
the second
okay.
page.
Okay, all new.
Yeah.
That's fine, except that in one section, we discuss the ability to add to existing houses, but.
Is that gonna foul that up? Or?
But I thought as long as the addition was under a certain percentage, they were exempted from these anyway,
Right.
so.
Unless it's
Yeah,
more
okay,
than
I think
10%.
it'll be okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Well, we're getting into the buffers now, so I guess,
Anyone else have any, I guess, do we want to start, does anyone else have any issues with the definition section?
no.
That would be included with, it's section 225 of the zoning code is a broad, it just includes a lot of definitions from the zoning code in general. So we thought that we would just insert it with the other definitions.
When you get into the general requirements, the buffer, a vegetative buffer in compliance with the Wycomico County Poultry House standards shall be provided around all active portions of the poultry operation. I guess, existing forest, if it's already there, we don't need,
We don't need it.
need something put in
I
there
think
to allow for
I
that.
think the last discussion, Mr. Holloway, was that that would definitely be in there as an exemption, as well as some other things, but that would be written in the poultry house standards.
Okay,
And that's what you're adopting separately by resolution.
okay, we're gonna do that separate.
Right.
How
Does
about,
that mean that I should take out where it will be provided? Should I just say a vegetative buffer shall be provided in compliance with the Wycomico Poultry House standards, period? Rather than saying shall be provided around all active portions of the poultry operation? That way the standards itself can tell you where it needs to be?
What I'm confused about is that these are definitions, but they don't seem to be definitions.
No, this is not definitions, I'm sorry. Yeah, 22525 is definitions.
Yeah.
Then underneath that, you'll see Article 20, uses and standards enumerated. 225106 is poultry houses. The existing section, you can see stricken out in Section A, setback requirements, poultry houses shall be set back a minimum of 100
Okay.
feet from all property limits. Only that, and then at the very end of this section, it used to be Section B, now it's Section E. Only that in this section are currently in the code. Everything-
Definitions of basic terms, you're saying you have poultry house listed. And are any of the other definitions, are they already listed somewhere else?
We don't have any other definitions in this.
So there's only one definition?
Relative to poultry houses, there are dozens of definitions in the zoning code, already in the code.
Would you like me to provide you a copy of that?
I mean, those govern everything from, a 7-Eleven to a barn.
Well, I was expecting, and I don't know, because, you're the legal expert on this, but I thought under definitions, if it would be applicable terminology such as, buffers, defining what a buffer was. Some people don't know what a buffer is, and actually it's a line of, vegetation. Some people don't know what setback means, and that just means the distance required from one structure or from one property line to another, period, without getting into the minutia of 100 foot, 400 feet.
Okay,
There are definition, the word setback, I believe, is defined, because we
Okay.
applied that throughout the code.
Okay.
The question of the buffer, my understanding, where we left it last, was that you would get into that detail in the sister document. So we're saying there's a buffer, and then you wanted to make the definition of the buffer something that was a little bit easier for you to adjust as you learned over time.
I understand. I'm okay with it. Like I said,
Okay.
I'm not the legal expert. I just thought that usually in these documents, you find more than one definition
There were a few things that I discussed with Mr. Lennox about whether we should define, and certain things it may be better to leave undefined for individual determination. That's not, it's a balancing thing. So if we go through here and you see a term that you think needs defined further, by all means, let's discuss it.
Okay, and assuming that it isn't already defined in current code.
Such as
I'd be happy
setback.
to print out section 25. if you want me to.
Getting back on the subject, when we're talking about general requirements and buffers, if somebody adds new houses to an existing farm, is it going to be required that they put buffers around the already existing houses? I'm making this complicated, aren't I?
No,
For existing houses, this only, as we just discussed, this only applies to new houses.
Okay.
We do have
That's what I
subsection
wanted.
E that says in legal non-conforming situations, the existing poultry houses may be replaced and/or enlarged up to 10% of the existing footprint without the permission of the Board of Appeals, provided the enlargement does not extend any further into the current minimum required setbacks. We don't discuss vegetative buffers with with existing
Okay.
poultry houses.
Want to make that clear.
I've got an easy one related to that.
Okay.
When you say shall be provided around all active portions of the poultry operation, what happens if you take out the word all?
Okay. I was just questioning whether it wouldn't be better to just say a vegetative buffer shall be provided in compliance with Wycomico Poultry House standards, and then let the poultry house standards specifically state. That way, if you've got a poultry house that's abutting up against a forest, we don't have to write all of that in here. It can be set forth in the standards.
The reverse setbacks, do you think we should put in here exactly what in the setbacks, you're talking about how far it is. You're also talking about the minimum foot setback from property lines. I think the reverse setback should also establish the distance.
You're right.
And we need a better
Are we keeping it the same?
my understanding was it was the same. If that needs to be made more clear, we can add to that.
I wouldn't leave it open to.
Reverse setbacks.
Yeah, I would make sure we have.
So
that's
it's
a better
consistent
definition.
with above, something like that.
Reverse setbacks shall apply shall apply equally.
Shall reflect the same standards as 1 and 2.
Right.
Or I and II. Right, is that okay?
Yes.
Think that'll work?
I'll work on the wording to that and let you know.
You don't like the way I said it?
I mean, it's okay.
I like it.
Also, we've got this word development again in the number 3. Road access, poultry house development should be changed to complex.
Yeah.
Where's that, Joe?
But it's
B3.
section 3.
Yeah.
Number, oh,
B3.
oh, number 3 itself, okay.
Complexes.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
On this document,
Yes.
I guess, I'm just wondering where the magic number of 10 comes in subdivisions. How did we come up with that number, or why? This is,
It came directly out of an adjacent community, one of the drafts that was circulated. So we put the number in for discussion, and that's the number that stayed as the council discussed it.
Well, Jack, I know you and I have had a conversation about subdivisions.
Yes, sir.
Do you want to explain the difficulty of defining what a subdivision exactly is?
Sure.
Because, as you know, I mean, it's yeah. I mean, you can do a much better job than I.
If it was solved numerically, it would be 2. Literally, the division of a lot into 2 parcels is a subdivision. Then you have subdivisions defined in different places, such as a minor subdivision, a major subdivision. Today, our current standard is relative to the septic bill, and that's 7, which is the way that this was drafted. Years ago, before certain restrictions were put in by the county, you would have a subdivision and strip out lots on a road, on a county road. It's on record at land records, it's titled, it's a subdivision. So if you want to have a separation from subdivisions, you need to define what type and how you do that. Numerically, the number 10, again, came from a nearby county.
I just wonder, how do you, or why do we make a difference between subdivisions and single-family homes if the poultry houses are going to be just so close to the houses anyway, whether they're, is that?
They're gonna be as, some people find them as offensive to a single-family home as
I'm
to
just
a
wondering,
subdivision. Sure.
I'm just wondering, do we single out subdivisions, or is that something that we want to do?
All homes, right. I don't know.
That's a good point. If you're holding this at 500 feet from a dwelling, that's where we are. Then
No,
from,
I wasn't going that way.
It does already say that there shall be a minimum of 500-foot
Foot
setback
setback.
for exhaust fans facing away from
Okay.
any residential dwelling not located on the farm, as well as. So really, subdivision of 10 or more homes is a bit redundant.
Sure.
It might be.
Because it already mentions residential dwelling. So do you
Sure.
want me to just take it out?
Yes.
Okay.
right, so in the A1 district, it's 400-foot setback from a residential dwelling. It would be 400 feet from 10 residential dwellings.
right.
Okay.
Wait, do I say 10?
No.
No,
Okay.
no, you're right. I agree. It was redundant.
And I'll do the same thing in the
Yes.
subsection 2.
Yes. And
on D, 2, which is page 85 on the electronic brief book. Why does it state that, or an approved health department septic system location to serve any of the above?
That was my next question.
that was Mr. Joe Holloway's suggestion, that someone who had divided a property and bought a lot and was getting ready to build should have protection just like someone who already had a house.
It's a buildable lot.
And so it's defined essentially
That's
as
not
a
what
buildable lot.
That's not what I was gonna
It
ask.
defines a buildable lot.
It's a buildable lot.
Well, essentially, you're saying if someone has said they're gonna build a house in this plot of land, then all of a sudden, a poultry house goes up in the next plot of land, those people are protected as if they already have a house there.
Yes.
Okay.
Or if you're a school and you've already got your septic approval, your Board of Health, or any of those separations.
Okay. Now, that's basic. I mean, it's cut and dry. I think, does anybody think that we've left anything out specifically here?
I mean, should we make this an emergency bill, so it goes into effect right away?
Well, I don't think we have to do that until we introduce it.
Fair enough.
I do need to change the language in it if we're gonna do that though.
It's going to go to planning and zoning first.
You're talking about the entire bill, or you're talking about just A1 portion of it?
Excuse me?
Are you talking about the entire bill or just the A1 portion of it?
Entire bill.
The entire bill.
Well, it seems a little strange that all we've talked about is the A1 portion, and I almost ignored the designated growth areas,
No,
which
we've
is...
been
There's a-
talking about the designated growth area.
We've been talking about the designated growth areas incorporated in the A1 area, but we haven't been talking about the designated growth areas as a separate entity, which basically it is.
This-
Right, John. Well, it is in here. There's 2 sections in here, and the second section does apply to the designated.
The second section, which is
Conversation's
in the
still
bill,
open.
does apply to it, but
We haven't closed the table. It's wide open,
I
John.
understand we haven't closed the table on
Okay.
it, but it sounds like you're willing to move this thing on without any discussion.
No, I'm asking for input.
You need to speak up sooner.
We're good.
No, we're working down the line, aren't we?
May I-
He was
We
on
went
D2.
past that.
He was on-
We're
May
on
I read
D2.
the section on the designated growth area? It's
Designated growth area.
So that's what we're working on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we weren't ready to close the book on it because unless there wasn't any discussion on it. Apparently, there's no discussion on it? Nobody
No,
feels
I
like it's-
wasn't even done yet, but that's okay. I appreciate it. I may have led you to believe that. I'm sorry if I did.
That was my feeling, that, okay, everybody's
okay.
ready to go ahead and put this to bed, let's go ahead and
No,
move on.
we've had more things to work out.
I may have misunderstood what Mr. Hall just stated, but the designated growth area section that we talk about discusses all other areas that are not zoned agricultural A1. It says designated growth areas include all base zoning districts of the county other than agricultural rural. So are you saying that we need to discuss designated growth areas within the A1 district?
Absolutely not.
Well, this section D already discusses, so if you're not satisfied with that section, that's fine, but this is the section we need to be looking at.
I mean, this section has the limitations on the five or more in the designated growth area and all that we've talked about before.
Well, yes, it does have it,
Oh, okay.
but am I happy with it? No, not particularly.
Okay, all right.
So
Let us-
this
let
is
us-
the
let us
issue.
know. Let us-
You know, I really feel that we're not giving enough protection to the designated growth area, and our focus has been on the A1 area. And, you know, I think it's imperative to the citizens who live inside this community to take into account their concerns, which they've expressed time and time again about the designated growth area. And the best way to protect them is what Mr. Culver recommended in his letter by making almost everything in the designated growth area a special exception.
So you're proposing that we ban CAFOs, or we ban, I don't like to use the word CAFOs.
Yeah, we're not
ban
using
poultry
CAFO.
houses
No,
Poultry houses.
no,
in-
not ban poultry houses.
in designated growth area.
Absolutely not. We're not talking about banning poultry houses. We're talking about, there's still existing poultry houses which are grandfathered in, which still have the right to be enlarged, which still have the right to operate within the designated growth area, and they should. They were here, they deserve to be here. But any growth impacts the immediate growth area where we hope to expand at a future time. And if you don't look at this and take it seriously, you're restricting the growth of the county itself.
Well, and John, that's, from a Salisbury perspective, that makes sense. But from a Willard's perspective, you know, you have a lot of farmland in the Willard's designated growth area that doesn't have the sort of people in the Salisbury designated growth area.
You know-
So if you ban new houses there, you're banning Lee Richardson from building new houses on his property.
It's very fortunate or unfortunate, but you get the ability to change the designated growth area, number one. And number two is you have exceptions, and that's why you have special exceptions, so you can take advantage of these things. So why not, they were designated as designated growth areas for a reason. And the reason was to encourage development within those areas, and there's a very small area that's allowed for designated growth and for growth period, economic growth in Wycomico County. The majority of it is agriculture. The majority, 85% of it is something in that neighborhood? So why not take this one portion and make it exclusive to people who are concerned about what we heard tonight, and give them an opportunity to say, okay, we're going to stay in these designated growth areas, and this is going to be our future in Wycomico County.
So John, let me ask you, you're saying still allow them by special exception,
Absolutely.
but get rid of the 5 or more number, right? So
Yep.
any chicken house that's built in designated growth area would have to go through a special exception
That's correct.
process.
And why wouldn't you do that?
Sure.
Well, the last,
I guess I understand what you're saying, but if you have a farmer that owns land that he's been farming and now he wants to build poultry houses,
Sure.
and he happens to end up in the designated growth area, not by his choice, but because of zoning at some point in time, you've downzoned his land so he can't use it for the purpose he
That's
wants it
not
to.
true.
Why?
Absolutely not. He can go through the appeals board and go through the special exceptions, and he also can.
And then they can downzone his land if it
And they can
doesn't pass.
zone
Yeah.
the land,
Yeah.
like we were talking about the situation out in your district, Joe.
Jack, if we were going to go down this road, could we limit it to the metro core of Salisbury and not the designated growth areas around, again, Willards?
Or Mardella, Sharptown.
Mardella, Sharptown, no.
That's
Mar-
it.
Mardella Springs has a far more reasonable designated growth area than Willards has, but,
Specify the Salisbury designated growth
well,
area.
Metro Cord, that has a legal definition, right?
Yes, it does. Yeah, honestly, this is the first time that you've asked me this question. I was wondering if we're going to come down to this, where we start to discuss that there are goals and policies more appropriate to what we call the Metro Core than to those other areas. And if you find that you can make good reason for that, you can differentiate through your codes.
Don't the towns and the city of Salisbury specifically define their own Metro Core zoning?
There's two.
We can't.
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Cannon, they don't. They define their municipal growth area. However, the land, until it is incorporated into a city or town, is under the control of the county
Okay.
and governed by your zoning code. Now, the municipalities, curiously, and I can't speak for Willards, for example, but I know in the Metro Core, you cannot build a chicken house in the Metro Core communities. That's their choice. They have said, no, you can't. If you have logic for this, you can start to differentiate between different parts of the designated growth areas, plural.
Mr. Granby?
That's exactly the issue that I was going to bring up, what Mr. Lennox just said.
Right.
Is a designated growth area a zoning area, or is it just in the comp plan?
Okay. The designated growth area is a phrase that I have used very carefully. And it is defined, as Ms. Harris said, for everything that's not A1. There is room within zoning to differentiate. You can do that. The designated growth area tends to be a planning term.
So what would we best be served to call this area around Salisbury?
I would have to work with that to make sure that we're following the code, because we've just we're going back and forth between planning, policy, goals, objectives, down to the regulation. So if you come to some sort of consensus or preliminary consensus or tell me what this would look like consensus, we'll look at some zoning language and see how that would play out. You can. It's within your authority to distinguish.
In reference to your suggestion, John, about the designated growth area by special exception only, I know that we discussed 2 months ago with Mr. Lennox, and Mr. Lennox's opinion was that in order to impose a special exception, that would pretty much be the same as making the statement that they would not be allowed, because it would be more difficult than worth addressing. Correct, Mr. Lennox? It would make it too onerous.
It is cumbersome. It sends a message in two directions. To those who are looking to invest, to purchase property on a speculative basis, to construct poultry houses, they would get the clear message that they are better served going to the area where you make it easier. And that is the A1. It is more difficult in the designated growth areas, and it is subject to legal challenge. When you put something into inherently permitted category, it essentially meets certain standards. That's what you're discussing about, those standards, and it is allowed. If you put it into the special exception category, it is subject to legal challenge, not just by the board and their discretion, but those who have standing adjacent and nearby.
Larry?
Is Mr. Lennox, special exception in the designated growth area, it sounds very restrictive. Is the Board of Appeals the final stop?
Circuit Court, Court of Special Appeals,
Court of Appeals,
Court of Appeals,
Court of Special Appeals.
and then Court of Appeals.
And then it gets very expensive.
And very time consuming.
I guess
Yes.
my problem with the designated growth area is part of it's very rural, and then some of it's not so rural.
Right.
So
Yeah.
how would you define that? I mean, well, you can't put it here because there's a Walmart here, or there's a service station here,
You mean, how would the Board of Appeals make that
How would you make-
decision
yeah,
on a case-by-case
yeah,
basis?
how would you make that, you know?
They'd look at surrounding circumstances,
Yeah,
you're right.
yeah.
How many folks live nearby, the status of the road, traffic impacts, all those sorts of issues that are laid out in the special exception criteria.
Why don't we get input from the municipalities that are impacted from this?
Pardon me?
Why don't we get input from the municipalities that are impacted from this and see whether they want to participate or not?
We're not building anything in the municipalities.
I know we're not
Yeah.
building anything.
I mean, again, to me, Mike, again, it's more the people that live outside of Willards or Powellville or some of those places that I'm concerned about. And it's Salisbury, I mean, Salisbury is a much more slam dunk case. I mean, you're exactly right about that. I mean, that's where there's more people, Lavender Shield Road, Pemberton, around
The
Delmar.
metro core area,
That-
basically.
I agree, but it's these, you know, again, it's some of the more outlying towns that, you know, people in Salisbury, you know, don't necessarily think about all the time, but these folks, you know, are out in Willards and stuff, you know, that's where Lee Richardson lives, is, you know, in between those two, and we essentially ban his ability to build a new chicken house. Let's not do that. I mean, while pursuing the goal of restricting development of these around Salisbury.
Why don't you get the input of the municipalities?
What would be, and I
I
don't
mean,
know
they have an active part in this government, don't
the
they?
process here,
Municipalities.
what would be the process of expanding the metro core out some instead of,
Would it be helpful to get the zoning map, Jack?
I'm not sure.
I mean, is that
I think that
is that
the-
too far-fetched of an question? or-
The difficulty about that question, Mr. Holloway, is that we're discussing poultry houses.
Yeah.
And we're trying to make sense of something with regard to poultry houses and folks who reside near potential poultry houses. The designated growth area covers a whole range of things in terms of services, future growth, anticipated, projected. It gets I get very careful about changing that line.
Okay.
People
That's fine. That's
purchase,
just a question.
I'm just saying, people purchase property, and let's assume they do what we suggest they do, and that is to have full knowledge. Residences should have some sort of comfort that what's out behind them is going to be something they expect, and business should as well, and farmers should as well.
Jack,
Personally, I don't like changing the line.
Okay.
Jack, and I'm a little gray on this.
Sure.
I thought you implied that everything that's not in the A1 district is in the growth area.
Everything that's not in the A1 is in a growth area, correct? We're talking about unincorporated unincorporated property. In addition to that, you have the incorporated, which is subject to city and town zoning.
And then I agree with you, Joe, that it's a little broad if it's everything that isn't.
Well, it's all the
If
rest
it's
of the
just
categories.
because-
It's all the rest of the categories where you allow poultry houses. That's the definition you just saw.
Did you just say you agreed with me? Thank you. This is the first time.
You wanted to clarify
To
that.
some
Agree more
extent.
than disagree.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ag use in the designated growth areas
Yes.
now.
Yes.
And I don't know exactly around Salisbury, but in other areas, there are poultry houses in designated growth areas in some other towns. Again, and I'm not
Yes.
sure about Salisbury, and there's one plan for the designated growth area of Salisbury. So right now, there are, but not around Salisbury, and the issue is there's one coming to the designated growth area of Salisbury, and I think that's where your concern is. And I don't know that many of us have a disagreement
Could
with
I
that.
distinguish something, Mark? It's within the county designate, the one you spoke about,
Yeah.
Lavender Shield Road. It's within the county designated growth area. It is not within Salisbury's growth area.
Okay.
But
It is
it's in
not within their municipal growth area.
Is it in the metro core?
It is in the metro core, which is one of the county's designated growth areas.
So this is another reason to use the metro core as a boundary possibly for the,
The only
this,
area with a metro core is Salisbury, correct?
Ask me that one more time.
The only area with a metro core is Salisbury.
No.
No?
Salisbury is one of the communities within the metro core. That includes
Okay.
Delmar
Okay.
and includes Fruitland. Each of those three municipalities have a growth area that they have chosen to define. Not all of the metro core has a claim to it, as it were, by one of those three municipalities. Lavender Shield Road, as an example, is not claimed by any of them. There are areas west of Fruitland to the river that are not ever going to come into Fruitland. There's east of Delmar that are not going to come into Delmar. But it's county designated growth.
So if we got together and decided that we like the idea of any chicken house built within the designated growth area around Salisbury, would it be
Yes.
by special exception only?
Yes,
And we gave you the task of defining that area for us.
yes.
Would you be able to do that?
I'd be able to define an area, whether you would agree or not, I don't know.
It's already on the zoning map.
I'm sorry?
It's already on the zoning map.
No, there's,
No.
no.
That's where
It's Fruitland, Delmar,
that's
and
where it's a
Salisbury.
little lot.
Right, there, if I understand what you would like, is to see what an area might look like around Salisbury that would have additional protections regarding poultry houses. Sure, I could do that, and then we discuss whether or not I chose the right criteria. And I would gather, because you've had representation, you know, from some of the other towns along the way, how does Delmar feel? How does Fruitland feel?
If you look at,
That was my question. What was the problem with defining it as the Metro Core? I didn't quite catch what you all.
I mean, the Metro Core has a definition, correct?
Oh, I don't, sure,
And that's already in there.
sure,
Metro Core's defined.
So we could just use Metro Core,
yes.
and that would
And all we
probably,
do is lump
Are
in
you okay with Delmar
Delmar
and
and Fruitland
Fruitland being included in that?
in addition to Salisbury.
Delmar and Fruitland are not included in the Metro Core. are they?
Yes,
Yes,
they
they
are,
are.
Yes, they are.
yes.
Mr. Kramer?
For planning purposes, I would suggest there's less and less of this distinction in terms of the Metro Core between Salisbury and Salisbury, Delmar, and Fruitland.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Just the
It's
Metro Core
really- You're
generally.
really,
It's all
I
one
believe
urban
you're
area.
really talking about an entity that encompasses Salisbury, Fruitland, and Delmar.
So in other words, the suggestion,
For purposes of this current discussion.
so the suggestion on the table is special exception only in the Metro Core area.
Is that,
Question, what's gonna happen when we go to tier maps? Because it kind of dissolves the Metro Core, you know?
But Mr. Lennox had already suggested that this has to be separate from the tier maps.
I think that
Entirely.
what happens, Mr. Culver, is that the comp plan, the zoning, the tier maps all have to be consistent. We've used the zoning base map as our starting point for both the tier map and now for poultry. So we're going down the road side by side, they're not contradicting.
So they're both gonna say the same thing.
They're both going to say the same thing.
Councilman Hall, is that where you were headed?
Well, actually, I'd like to see the difference between the designated growth area and the Metro Core area for around the Salisbury area.
It's the exact same thing.
Exact same thing?
Yes, sir.
It's just the Metro Core is a smaller portion of it, correct?
No, the
Or is it
Metro
no?
Core is the entire growth area. It's the big circle in the heart of the county that contains those three communities, their growth areas, and some beyond
I
that.
think we need to look at the map
Sure.
before we make any
Yeah,
kind of
because the Metro
decision.
Core,
We have the map.
has the Metro Core boundary
No, no, I'll find
changed
it.
from the 98 comp plan to the proposed 2014 comp plan?
I would have to go back and look to see if we had some minor changes, and offhand, I'll tell you where they are. Fruitland. Fruitland had some changes when the final alignment of in the bypass on the north. There were some issues out near Northwest Road, and there's some issues down south with Fruitland and down to the creek. So there's a couple of changes. Those changes, you, and I'll say your predecessors on the council, acknowledged when you drafted the 2004 zoning code. That's what we're working off now. The 98 comp plan, which defined the Metro Core, and our discussion today is very close. And I can bring those changes to your attention, which you will see explicitly when Mr. Hall walks through the comp plan with you.
Is that map in?
It's not a major difference, though.
Okay.
Yeah, we all have a copy of the map with the designated growth area.
so,
And I'm fine with Metro Core or the designated growth area, whatever we
Okay.
want to call it then.
Sure.
Mike,
That's it.
Is it?
we've all got our count books here. So,
Just you can put it on the chair, Jack, that'd be great. Yes.
There you go. I mean, so the trade-off would be Metro Core, and then we don't worry about the designated growth areas around Pittsville, Willards, Mardella Springs, Hebron, Sharptown,
Or any of the rural villages.
or rural villages.
I don't think you could do that with input from those municipalities.
Well, we've been discussing this for 3 months, John. I'm sure the municipalities have been paying attention to it. They also have the right to discuss it with Planning Commission through all the public hearing processes that are going to be,
Because we reach
they're
out
going
to
to be given
them.
the opportunity.
We will be.
Yep.
We will.
We will reach out to them.
Sure, this is just a question right now to see how you will start the public process.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and if you look at the map, I mean, Sharptown, Mardella Springs, Hebron, I mean, they don't have the large ones, so, I mean, yeah.
That's a lot of rural area there, especially on the west side.
Potential for municipal infrastructure in small
And east of, the east side of Delmar is very rural.
And I also understand that the life of a chicken house is 20 to 20, 15 to 20 years, 20 to 25 years, and
Yeah.
the whole world's going to change in that time period.
Look on page, Joe, if you look on page, map 7-2. It's not quite the green shaded area up
It's
there.
not as large as that, is it?
Yeah, it's not, small isn't that? Just on the east side of Delmar.
Joe, just a suggestion, if you notice in section, at the end of subsection 1, it says the board shall consider, talking about special exceptions, the board shall consider circumstances relative to soil, land cover, ownership relations, property restrictions. If you want to add an area of the Metro Core or something like the development or anything like that, you can always add considerations that you want the special exceptions board to consider. Do you know what I mean? So if they are in that portion of the Metro Core and you're concerned about it, you can add that into what you want them to consider for granting the special exception.
Mr. Cannon,
Yes, sir.
can I make a related suggestion?
Yes.
Leaving aside the phrase designated growth areas for a moment, we can go down to individual zoning categories. We have a series of residential categories, R5, R8, R10, R20. We can show those to you. We can look at the commercial zones. First of all, we have to review them internally to see if any of them leave a door open for poultry to begin with. We can go back strictly to zoning language as opposed to the planning language, because those growth areas outside of Willards and Pittsville, for example, do not have right now, as you can see from that map, see the subtle shades of green that are different there. It's more called town transition under the current zoning. It's not called out as R20 or R10. Maybe we go back to a simpler approach and just say, in those designated districts, list them, you see how they're mapped, and see if that's something you're comfortable with.
So you're going to incorporate R10, R22, et cetera, and you think
Just
that-
list it literally.
and you think that will be a better solution instead of being more convoluted?
This is
I'm serious.
this is obviously a moving target for us as we're trying to figure out your goals. That might be a way for us to go.
Okay.
If you did that, could you create a map for council that would clearly depict what that would look like?
Yes, because it would be just and this is an easy one for Mr. McKenzie. I don't often volunteer him for some sort of just theoretical maps, but you turn off certain overlays, and you're just going to see that exact same map, and you're going to see where the residential districts pop out.
Okay.
And
Okay.
that might be fairly straightforward. Mr. Holloway, that would immediately leave out
Turn off some of those.
the large area east and west of Delmar.
And Salisbury. right?
Well,
Yeah.
no, on that
The
map,
light,
I'll use, I think this is teal,
yeah,
it would leave those areas out.
all right.
And that would also leave out all of Willards, Sharptown, all Mardella Springs, all that. Okay.
And that's town transition, Joe.
Do you wanna show
I mean, on the, Joe,
let
on
the
the west side of
audience see.
Salisbury,
Yeah, it's town
the largest block of land there, the owners of that don't want chicken houses near it either.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
sorry?
because they eventually want it to be a development.
For the audience, it would be pretty much everything on this map is in color, except for this teal color. Teal color is town transition. So the rest of the map would permit the development by special exception only, with the special exception criteria to be evaluated.
So we need a bit of clarification here then. We've already gone forward with the recommendation for additional restrictions in the designated growth area as a whole, allowing them, not special exception, but just additional restrictions. Are we then saying there's going to be a third layer getting into the R10s and R20s?
You're saying if they pass the special exception, then they have to comply with these increased regulations? Because first, they'd have to pass the special exception to even be a chicken house.
So the special exception, the exception we're referencing is not just referencing the designated growth area. It's specifically in getting into the R zoning, right, Jack?
Your current version says 5 or more. Mr. Hall has suggested 1 or more. Did I gather that?
Correct.
Well,
So he's suggesting 1 or more around Salisbury, Delmar, and Fruitland, 5 or more in the teal areas outside.
Correct.
in the designated growth area.
Correct.
We'll find that.
Yes.
So
So-
we're leaving designated growth area in?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, designated growth area is going to be in with the restrictions that we've already have
How
addressed.
about
But we're talking about the special exception issue will go towards the R10 and the R22, et cetera. And is that correct, Jack?
Your version had a special exception in all of the designated, just let me use that phrase for a moment, in the designated growth areas for 5 or more. Mr.
Right.
Hall was not comfortable with that number and wanted it to be 1 or more. The compromise you seem to be reaching is, it's 1 or more when you're in the metro core, it's 5 or more when you're outside.
In a
Nobody builds
designated
one
growth
poultry
area.
house.
It's still
No,
5 or
no, I'm
more.
saying any poultry house, any poultry house.
It's still 5 or more in the designated growth area.
Gotcha?
But in those areas which you're going to find are
Yes.
R22 or
Yes,
R10,
yep,
those are going to require special exception.
for everything,
But 5 or more, you're not talking about in
for
the
all
A1.
poultry houses.
That's right.
Okay, when he said
Right.
everywhere else, I just wanted to clarify.
area.
Everywhere
in the
other
designated.
than, yeah, okay.
That's right.
I mean, do we need to do that? I mean, there's not much left. There's not much left around
There's not much
Salisbury.
teal.
There's nothing around Salisbury, really, then. That takes care of the Salisbury issue. So should,
And it leaves it the way you discussed it 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
In the
So-
other areas.
so we just knock out the rest of the designated growth areas because Salisbury's taken care of.
You could do that.
And that would make it less complicated because the issue seems to be around Salisbury.
Does that mean, though, that the A1 would be regulated as such, the rest of the designated growth area that didn't fall within this limited exception would be unregulated altogether?
No, just,
Or just lump them in with the A1
Yeah.
yeah,
restrictions?
yeah. All the rest,
Okay.
the
So we need
countywide,
to amend the,
oh, I mean,
applications.
the other council members have to agree to that, obviously, but it would be, there's, the A1 restrictions for Wycomico County, the entire county. Then in the metro core, there's 1 or more has to go through special exception, which,
Correct.
all right.
Correct.
So it's basically all of the rural areas of Wycomico County, then the metro core has the special protection for 1 or more.
But that won't affect what's currently in the pipeline, such as 11 the Shield.
That's a separate discussion for you.
You can.
That will be the process section.
So Jack,
Let's deal with the general, the move to specific.
so what are we then saying as far as the designated growth area in the 5 or more? Are you telling me that is no longer?
Yeah, that's out. We don't need that language about 5 or more.
If we go with Mr. Hall, is that,
In the teal,
Is that
you
good?
do.
That's correct.
We're gonna treat that just like the A1.
You gonna say,
I thought we were going to establish 3 layers: ag, DGA, and then
that's what I thought.
1 or more in
Mark
the
sticking
R.
to the fall
Yes.
in the teal.
Yes.
see, my thing was saying, then if the issue's around Salisbury, let's do John's more restrictive around Salisbury, then the rest is covered by the countywide regulations.
I think what Mark's trying to say is there's no need to over-regulate the in-between area when there's no problem with it.
I mean, there's
Up
not
to you
much
guys.
land there, and we haven't heard complaints about the teal area. We've heard complaints about the metro core.
I think it should be defined.
So you're saying, you're suggesting leaving the town transition areas
Yeah.
out?
Yeah, which,
The same as A1.
Treat them as a-
Leave those areas
Is that what you're saying, Mark?
as A1?
Same as
something to
A1.
think about.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would make things much less complicated.
All right, somebody's got to tell me exactly where we are, because I'm completely lost.
But again, I think we should solicit comments from those areas.
We'll hear about it.
I hope
Again,
so.
you guys are going to have to break it down for each level at a time. We've already established A1 district, okay?
All right,
We had a definition for the designated growth area of 5 or more.
throw that out.
That's gone. Okay, so what is going to be the defining
Metro Court.
Metro core.
metro core only?
Yep.
What about Jack's suggestion on getting further into the
Expanding the
R20,
metro-
R10?
expanding
That's
the
how
metro
I would have to
I'm
spell
just
it
calling
out.
it Metro Court.
I would have to list out for you those specific zoning categories.
And Jack, when you listed out those, would you say it was expanding the metro core then?
No,
Okay.
no,
Just-
it's
just-
it's already in some color on there. And
He's not gonna change that.
it's mostly the light greens, light yellows. When you get in land use colors into a reddish color or purple, that's a commercial or industrial.
Okay.
So it's really gonna affect what you see on there in terms of yellows and light greens.
And you're saying that you will get us a map that will specifically show us this?
Easily,
Sure you do.
Okay.
easily.
All right.
Yep. And how hard would it be to take some of these light yellows out if we needed to?
It would be more difficult. Oh, could you take them out? You could take them out. Yep. It starts to break down, we're trying to stay with your logic about why,
Yeah.
and if you could distinguish, I guess you could do that.
Okay.
Any other comments?
This is fun.
Anything else?
This is good stuff, Mr. Cannon.
Another night that we haven't got it settled.
Okay. Mr. Hall, would you like to entertain a motion to move on to the next item?
Anything else?
Is there anything else, or do I need a motion to go ahead and change it?
Don't need it. No, I think everyone's in agreement,
Yep.
correct? We want to see Jack come back with the map? Yep. We're not moving the bill forward. We can't move the bill forward. We need to see the map.
Are you all comfortable with the non-conforming situation section? Were there any issues with that? Sorry,
Is that the,
it's all the way at the end. And it's only a few additions to what was already in existence.
yeah. That's the 10%?
Yeah.
The only other thing, Mr. Lennox, is we do have to, at some point in time, we won't do it tonight, but we have to see the addendum. Or as we were referencing, the Wycomico planning. Poultry standards.
Sure.
I'm assuming that's something we don't have put together yet.
I don't think you have to, it's in draft form. I think that's gonna come right at the end. I think that's gonna be your last thing.
We're
But-
close to it, I hope. We're close to the last thing.
Yes, sir.
More time.
Yeah, I know. Because that would be, I mean, that's the real.
I understand. At least now when we know, I think I have additional guidance on the buffers and we can go
Right.
from there.
Okay, good.
Yep.
All right,
Great, thank you all.
thank you very much. Moving on, the meeting on the, as far as the discussion, gentlemen, the work session on the budget, et cetera, was just trying to get a feel from council members as where you think we are, what departments you may want to talk to, whether these dates that have been presented for you are acceptable. We already know that May 10th and May 11th are out. But outside of that, we'd like to know, exactly what council, if you've had time to review it yet, and honestly, if you haven't had time to review the budget, I don't want to waste everybody's time tonight, but the idea tonight is to see if these dates work for everyone, and if we need all these work sessions.
Wednesday the 18th, didn't we get an invitation to the car breakfast? Coast Association Realtors. It's at 8:30
Yeah, that's right.
at the Denang Room.
So if it's 8:30 to 9:30, or?
I don't
I
know,
think
it
to
might be
10,
longer.
something like that. Yeah, or 8 to 10,
How about
something
if
like
we
that.
do 10 o'clock Wednesday the 18th? That should give us,
Couple minutes to leave early
yeah,
if we had to leave early.
just eat and leave, you know.
Sounds good.
Oh, sorry, the camera's on.
So it's May 18th, would be 10 to 3.
It'll be a busy day. May
And-
18th.
Mr. Cannon, we can't hear you down here, I'm sorry.
We changed, May 10th and 11th are out. May 18th is 10 a.m. instead of 9, as it is right now.
Okay?
17th, are we gonna work on it after council meeting, or are we gonna wait and see what's on the agenda? See how
That's a
our
good
agenda
idea.
runs.
Yeah, I
We
mean,
could even come in early.
we know we're
too.
going to be discussing poultry on that agenda.
You think
Yeah.
Well, can we come in at 9 or,
we can?
you know,
I can.
Tuesday the 17th?
Yeah.
That's a good suggestion.
John, as
Well,
far
we'd
as-
only have an hour, Mark. Maybe that's sufficient, though. Okay.
I mean, we'd get an hour's worth of stuff done.
If we wanted to.
An
meet
hour's
with
worth
the
of
group.
grilling Wayne done. So,
Get them riled up for the
yeah,
council
yeah,
meeting.
there you go.
I
So-
think our first meeting on Thursday will define whether we need, how much time we do need to spend.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, we may end up eliminating a lot of these.
Right.
It really,
It's to the point.
what we have to decide between now and I would say what we have to decide between now and our next meeting, of course, May 12th. I don't think we're ready to meet on May 12th, gentlemen, because we haven't decided yet what topics we want to discuss and what departments we want to meet with.
Well-
We discuss,
May 12th, we could,
the letter.
May 12th's a budget hearing, right, at the Civic Center.
Mr. Cannon, there's
That's at night,
something
though.
else that needs to be taken into consideration. When
Is
you
that a-
decide who you want to hear or meet with, Mr. Strasburg has to line all those people up. And we don't know, they don't know when they're going to be able to come.
All right,
It's a
what
little
we'll-
bit of a balancing act.
what we'll do preliminarily, or if that's even a word, on May 12th, make sure you've got a clear understanding of the entire budget and be prepared to discuss exactly why you would or would not want to meet with a particular department head or not. We need to know by that date exactly what departments you want to talk to.
So we are meeting May 12th.
So we'll meet the 12th if that works for everyone.
And it's the 10th and the 11th that's out.
10th and 11th is
Now,
out.
is that at the Civic Center? We're gonna do
No,
We're going to do that
Okay.
9 o'clock in the morning.
that? Okay, here.
Right.
On Thursday, May 12th. And at that point in time, hopefully we can break down an entire schedule, and we could say, theoretically, we could say, okay, on May 24th at 9 a.m., we're going to meet with Public Works and break down, and know at that exact time whether we want to talk to 2 departments or whether we want to talk to 10. Okay?
well, I mean, could we say then, since we're already here, could we say, let's say at 9:30, let's meet about economic development? I mean, I know a few of us want to talk about that, so could we,
Yeah, there are 2 or 3 on this list that we know we're gonna wanna meet.
yeah, so
Just off.
from
off
9
the
to
bat.
9:30, we talk about our schedule, and 9:30, we talk about economic development. Could that, so we're not just meeting for 15 minutes saying what we want to meet with and then going home.
Are you referring to May 12th, Mark?
Yep. May 12th, 9:15, 9:30, say economic development. We'll talk about that.
I have no problem with that.
I have no problem with it.
Is there any other specific category that any council member would like to discuss on May 12th after we have reviewed the overall requests? So right now, what we're going to do on May 12th, we will have an exact idea of what departments we want to meet with, and we will, at that point in time, assign particular work session days to those departments and see if we can't coordinate that with the executive branch. In addition to May 12th, we will also review the issue of economic development.
Does that work for your schedule, Mr. Strasburg? I assume that you'd be the one pinch hitting for economic development. Sure. Okay.
Okay? Anybody else want to add anything else to May 12th before we
Can't think.
we're done? Thank you, Mr. Keller. Any other discussion in general in reference to the budget?
May 24th, I'm out, but everybody else wants to meet, that's fine.
And when's our public hearing? Is that May 12th in the
The
evening?
12th, the public hearing is the 12th at 6 PM.
All right. Planning to put that on my calendar.
And does anybody else recognize any particular day they won't be available, just offhand?
Are you saying on the 12th you're only going to meet for a very short time in the morning?
We're going to meet to decide exactly what departments we want to meet with and assign a particular work session where we would like to have them come in, a particular date. In addition, we'll also be discussing economic development with the executive branch.
Shouldn't go past noon, probably, if we start at 9.
I couldn't imagine it would.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine. I couldn't
Really,
imagine.
for 2.5 hours about
Yeah.
economic development.
So realistically, we're looking 9 to noon on the 12th. Any other input?
Yes, sir.
Seeing none, entertain a motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor? Means adjourned.
Hey, Bob. Thank you.